it's really important. It's linked to creativity, learning, coping with stress, and so it's not surprising that it's mentioned in curricula around the world, including the early years curriculum in the United Kingdom. We ran an experiment with 87 2- and 3-year-olds and their parents to see if children can learn to joke from apps. So if they do jokes within an app, can they recreate those in the real world? Could they learn from that? We had one group of parents teach their kids some jokes with toys. So this might be playing a drum with a toy robot's head. Another group of parents taught their kids the exact same jokes, but these were all virtual. These were on an app. So they're using their finger to swipe the robot's head onto a drum to make some noise. We had two more groups who acted as controls, and they played music. So they either had actual toy instruments or they played with a music app. And then we tested children to see if they could recreate the jokes that half the children learned in the first half. We also looked at whether children would copy some new jokes that we threw at them. And finally, if children would invent their own jokes that we hadn't shown them. And what we found was that children who learned jokes from their parents in the first half were much more likely to create those jokes in the second half than children who were playing music. And it didn't matter if children were using apps or using actual toys or instruments. It was really about the content, not the format of the interaction. So children who were, banging the robot's head on a drum just with swiping their finger on an app, they later were more likely to take the toy robot and bang the drum with that toy robot's head, even though they hadn't physically done it before. So children who learned to joke on the app did just as well as children who learned to joke with actual toys. Now, in terms of children copying new jokes that they hadn't seen in the first half, we just didn't see any differences across the group. So this is really about learning those specific jokes from an app or from toys and replicating them. It didn't have any broader effects of copying jokes. However, there was a general downside to apps in that children who played with apps, whether it was the music app or the joke app, they were less likely to invent new jokes than kids who played with actual toys, whether they were joking or playing music. And that's really interesting. It might be that apps constrain what they're doing, and maybe perhaps these apps weren't allowing them to think for themselves as much in a way as kind of free-form toys would allow. So while kids can learn jokes from apps, it might be that it constrains their own independent thinking as well. So, there's benefits and there's disadvantages. So I think overall, parents should feel fine about playing with apps with their children. Spending 10 minutes joking around with an app can actually teach your child how to make jokes in the real world. Kids don't just compartmentalize it and just think whatever's in an app stays there. They understand the link to the real world. And certainly in situations where it's not, easy to get toys out, maybe, I don't know, you guys are on a long car trip or something like that, or at the doctor's office, this is a great way for kids to learn. And so I think, when you're choosing an app, think about, can you make jokes in it? Are there funny things to point out? And really explain the jokes to your kids, laugh about them. And that could be a really nice interaction. However, keep in mind that apps in general might constrain children's interest in inventing jokes. It might put them in a more constrained frame of mind. So you really have to balance app use in terms of kind of the goals you want for your kids.